I have a lot of things to go through, so I'll get started going through them. Part. Oh, I forgot what part I'm recording. I think I'm recording part 8. In part 7, I said that YouTube wouldn't process part 6. Yes, that was because there was an error in editing the file, so that was nothing to do with YouTube. So I guess the moral of the story there is, if YouTube cannot process your video, that may not necessarily be because there's a bug on YouTube's side. You might want to double check your edit, or at least for me, like I might want to double check my edit, as opposed to just assuming there's a bug and just trying to upload it again and beat my head against the wall. So about that whole debate whether or not I should use NVIDIA GeForce Experience or use OBS to record things, I find that in videos recorded using NVIDIA, there tends to be really poor audio. And not just because I do like the normalization wrong, it's just worse audio just in general. It was just worse sounding. And I don't know why that would be, since it's the same microphone with the same ADC in the microphone connected to a USB port, the same USB port. It's a USB microphone. I don't have a condenser and a preamp because I don't have the funds for that. Well, I do, but I'm not willing to spend it. So I don't know how it's crunching the audio to make it sound worse, but that implies that I should just never use NVIDIA GeForce Experience ever again if I care about having the best audio I can produce, which I do. I want the best audio I can make, and instead just use OBS for everything. So that's what it looks like it's going to be now. I'm just going to abandon trying to use NVIDIA and just always use OBS. But the later installments of Matoran Adventures were recorded using NVIDIA. And so they have some kind of crummy audio in them. I know the Kuminui fight one has clipping, and the remaining ones I fixed the clipping, but the audio just for some reason, even though I fixed the clipping, still sounds like I'm talking from inside a bathroom or a dumpster or something the whole time. It's not clean, and it doesn't sound the same way it should sound if you were to listen to me in person in the room I'm recording. It's like underwater or something. So I'll not do that. And when I do more serious recordings, I'll not do that. I'll just always use OBS. Which is what some Twitch streamers I know of do that, right? They just always use OBS. Or they use XSplit, but why use XSplit when you can use OBS? So that influences choosing a graphics card, because if NVIDIA GeForce Experience does not produce recordings of the quality that I want, then that is less of a motivation to buy an NVIDIA graphics card in particular. Now again, it doesn't matter because competitor graphics cards aren't necessarily any more available than NVIDIA graphics cards, unfortunately. However, it does give me a reason to still buy, say, an AMD 6900 XT if I just happen to find that, as opposed to like an NVIDIA 3080 or 3090 or something like that. Yeah, another advantage of using OBS is you can select your resolution and frame rate you want to record at. So right now I'm recording at max settings, right, 1080p at 60 Hz, which is the max it would let me do on this laptop I'm recording on right now. With NVIDIA GeForce Experience, you have no idea what's getting spit out, and it always turns out the file sizes are very big. And that's annoying, because then I have to upload those big files. I can always shrink them down, but if they're big to start with, after I shrink them down by editing them, they're going to be bigger after they're shrunk too. So it's hard to upload those big files, and I can't control the resolution or frame rate at which it's recording. It just does its own thing. Whereas OBS is customizable and actually thinks you know what you're doing and know how to apply settings to get the performance that you want out of it. So that should probably settle that whole thing. So everything from here on out, I believe, should be recorded using OBS. Something I wanted to, so that's the first thing. First couple things. Something I wanted to clean up from last time. I was talking about Bitcoin just because I had nothing, that was just what was on my mind at the time. And I mentioned that I did a project having to do with Bitcoin hashing when I was in school. But I forgot all the details. And so because I forgot all the details, I said some things in there that give you the wrong impression about how Bitcoin works. One of which is, I said that to add a new entry to the blockchain, you had to hash the previous one. No, you don't hash the previous one. You hash your own. But you do have to include the 256-bit hash for the previous entry in your entry to the blockchain when you add it, such that if you were to change the previous entry, it would no longer have the right hash value, and then the software that controls Bitcoin, whatever you would call that, would reject the change because it checks the hash every time a new entry to the blockchain is added, and it checks and makes sure that the next entry, that the hash of the previous entry equals the hash that it says it's supposed to have in the next entry. So, what is SHA-256? SHA-256 is a checksum. We call it a hash, but it also can call it checksum to make sure that, which is a 256-bit long number or string of bits that we use to make sure that a file has the correct contents. So, say you downloaded a large file that's maybe several megabytes. You can do a SHA-256 hash of it, and you get a 256-bit hash. Compare that with the hash of the original that it's supposed to have, and now you know that it has, now because you compare the two hashes, if the hash is correct, then you have a very, very large reason. There's like a 1 in 256 chance that the whole file doesn't match what you wanted. So you only have to download the file once, and then then you hash it, and if the checksum is correct, then you know you have it correct to, again, with a certainty of 1 out of 256, and then you don't have to download the multiple megabyte file or multiple gigabyte file multiple times. So you save yourself that work. Whoever came up with Bitcoin commandeered the idea of the SHA-256 hash and using it as a way to enforce the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. So you know that each block is valid because they have the correct hash as shown in the next block. So how do you perform a SHA-256 hash? Well, you need to draw a picture, which I can't do while playing the World's Hardest Game 3. But you have to first pad up your information into integer multiples of 512 bits. And each of those 512 bits is called a block. So how you do this padding is you pad with zeros until 1 plus 64 bits away from the end of this integer multiple of 512 length batch of data. So say you had I'll just keep talking. You make the 64-bit, the second to last group of 64 bits 1. So basically the 65th bit from the end is a 1. So it zeros up until the 65th bit from the end. And then the last 64 bits are the amount of bits that the original data took up. So if you have 640 bits of data, then you're going to need 2 blocks. The first 512-bit block is the first 512 bits of that 64-bit data. The next one is the remaining 128 bits, plus 512 minus 128 minus 64 minus 1 zeros, whatever that is, a 1, and the last 64 bits are the numerical representation of 640, because that's how many bits the original had. And both blocks together make a total of 1024 bits. So before you hash, you have to pad up to an integer multiple of 512. If, say you have information that's an already integer multiple of 512, you still have to pad, because you have to have room for that 1 and the size. So you end up actually with 3 blocks. You end up with one that's 512, the first 512 of the original data, the next one that's the next 512 of the original data, and then one that's all zeros until you get a 1 and then a 64-bit representation of 1024. So you have to have room you have to have enough room for the size and the 1, so that can make you pad more than you might have thought. You have to actually be 128 bits short of an integer multiple of 512 to actually get that many blocks. You need 64 bits for that 0, and then another 64 bits for the size. And then you process, you process this through the hash. You start with an initial value, which is standardized for SHA-256, so 256 bits. It's kind of random, but it's standardized. And then you iterate this through a hash algorithm as many times as there are 32-bit words in your 512 bit block. So a word is 32 bits, and see how many bits are in a 512. How many words are in a 512? There are, oh dear, I have to do mental math. 2 words is 64. 4 words is 128. 5 words is 512. Okay, would be 16 words. 16 times. Yeah, 16 times 32 is 512. So you have to do 16 iterations. Each one being a function of the previous hash value. Again, you have a standardized starting place. The next 32-bit word in your block, and the next 32 bits in the standard K sequence, which is this 512-bit thing called K. You take 1 K at a time. So that's the SHA, and then you eventually end up with this 256-bit thing at the end, which is again a function of the standardized K values, the standardized starting point, and your data that you hashed. And that's your SHA-256 checksum. Now, a Bitcoin, to do Bitcoin, you take the Bitcoin, if you want to add an entry to the blockchain, you take the Bitcoin header, which is a 640-bit sequence of the entry you want to add to the blockchain. You hash it, and you have to hash it in 2 blocks. Then you take the remaining 256-bit hash. You have to now hash that. So you pad it up to a 512, like you would normally pad it, and then you do a hash of that in 1 block. So 3 blocks total, 2 hashes. So you do a hash on the hash, as I said in the previous part. And then if your hash is numerically below a certain value determined called the threshold, we'll talk about the threshold later, then you may then add your entry to the blockchain. And this entry to this header that you add to the blockchain has several fields. The first field, which is 1 word long, again 1 word is 4 bytes, 32 bits. If I remember correctly, is the version of your Bitcoin software, which I don't know what that is, but okay. I don't know what all of these fields mean. Then you have the hash of the previous entry to the blockchain, again, which you need for security. Then you have the date and the time. You have something that contains the information in the block. So it's all the transactions that the block represents. I don't actually understand what this means, because does that mean you have to add an entry to the blockchain every transaction? That means you have to hash again? I'm not sure. So I'm not actually sure what goes into the the information that goes in the transaction, to what transactions are in the block. Followed by the date and time. Followed by something, a 32-bit or one word. Well, actually, there's the threshold next. The threshold. Then 32-bit or one word piece of this header called the nonce. And to add this block to the blockchain, you need to choose a nonce, such that when we do this double hashing, the hash is the number that hash would represent is below the threshold. So let me look at this again to review. So my other computer that has this on its screen timed out. Correct. So the first thing in the header is the version, which is one word. Then the hash of the previous block, which is 8 words or 256 bits. Then the hash Merkle root, which is the transactions in the block. That's 8 words or 256 bits. Then the date and time, which is 1 word or 32 bits. Then the threshold, which is again 1 word or 32 bits. Now, the threshold is for a 256-bit hash, so the threshold has some coarse precision to it. I guess you have to pad with 224 extra zeros at the end. And then you have the nonce. And the nonce is a 32-bit number. So 8 hexadecimals. So that would be 32 bits. You gotta keep in mind of phased and amplitude a lot in that part. And you have to guess the nonce to add your entry to the blockchain that will get you a hash that's below the threshold. And that allows you to add that entry to the blockchain. And that's the work you have to do. That's what mining is trying various nonces until you get a nonce that works. Now, with Bitcoin, the higher the hash rate, or the higher, with greater success, people are able to add entries to the blockchain, the lower the threshold gets. So that to try to normalize the rate at which entries are being added. So the more people there are out there mining, the harder it is for each miner to get a coin or get an entry added to the blockchain. So when you mine more, there isn't necessarily now more Bitcoins being mined. Instead, the pie doesn't actually get bigger. Instead, you're just dividing the pie over more pieces. At least in the rate at which the Bitcoins are being mined. Now, so that's what I know about Bitcoin Hash and Bitcoin mining. I just let the game go and it just died there. Bitcoin, so in around the 2006-2007 era, when NVIDIA's Pascal architecture came out, there was an era which it was hard to buy 1080 Ti GPUs because they're all being bought out by miners. And like I said in the previous, mining, not as in people under the age of 18 in the United States kind of miners. Miners as in people mining Bitcoins using their GPUs. Of course, once Bitcoin crashed, then suddenly the market was flooded with a bunch of used 1080 Ti's, and I missed that opportunity to buy one when that happened. But there was a time where it was hard to buy those GPUs because miners were all buying them. And when miners start buying GPUs, that hurts the stock considerably because, again, the more GPUs you have, the more you can mine. So the gamer will stop at 1 GPU because with a 1080, 2 would have been useful because 1080s had SLI. But the miners wouldn't stop at 1 because the more GPUs you could have, the more you can mine. So just trying to get as many GPUs as possible and depleting the stock of GPUs as soon as there would be one, it would be bought up by a miner. It would force the stock all the way to 0. The more NVIDIA would make, the more they would be bought. Now, NVIDIA would like that as far as their stock value is concerned, as in the piece of their company, not, you know, how many they have in stock, you know what I meant. They sell a lot of GPUs that way, but for an individual trying to buy one, it's very inconvenient when the mining thing starts happening. Now, Bitcoin, it's not realistic to mine Bitcoin on a GPU anymore because you'll be outcompeted with those mining Bitcoin with custom ASICs. But you can still mine Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency, on a GPU. Now, I went back to look up how to do the hash for Bitcoin again for this video to talk about Bitcoin again. I haven't looked up the details of the hash for Ethereum. It's quite a bit different than the SHA-256 hash. Again, it's public information. It's on the Ethereum wiki what the hash is. There's even example Python code for it out there. So I will look into that later before I make a fool of myself trying to talk about the Ethereum hash. But that can still effectively be mined using a GPU, and apparently the way that hash is designed actually makes it difficult for you to take advantage of custom ASICs to perform the hash. So it's designed intentionally such that people with GPUs could still be able to mine it in the future. What was I going to say about looking up Bitcoin? Something about hashing. There's something that was on my tip of my mind a minute ago about hashing that I'm forgetting. So I want to get that over with before I go on to the next topic, but I guess I'll go on to the next topic. So, I'm still sort of torn about the ethics of cryptocurrency mining. So this is as succinctly as I can say what cryptocurrency is. Cryptocurrency is doing a menial, repetitive, nonsense task computationally in order to add a piece of digital information to a global ledger for which that piece of information has value by means of people thinking it has value. And the reason why they think it has value is because they think other people will think it has value. It is the most fiat of fiat currencies possible, essentially. If everybody just immediately stopped thinking cryptocurrency blockchain entries had no value, they would lose all their value. They have no intrinsic value in themselves. You cannot eat them. You cannot produce with them. They are completely useless. Unlike something like gold, which actually had end users, because we may use gold in architecture, in electronics, and in jewelry. So, gold actually had value, and still has value for its use, as well as... But it tended to be picked up as currency because it had something that was valuable anyway. But it had an end user, and it had demand from an end use, and that's what gave it its value in the first place, and that's why we use it as currency nowadays and use it as like a commodity. Cryptocurrency does not even have an end use in any way. Now, in the early history of the United States, the federal money, basically what it was is it was a note that it represented ownership of a certain quantity of gold stored in some vault somewhere, which I believe the silly thing to say is Fort Knox. I don't know if that's where the gold's actually stored anymore though. Or silver, but ever since Woodrow Wilson, and it's gone on and off the gold standard, so it's not been consistent. I don't remember all the specific history. Right now it actually represents nothing. So the U.S. dollar infamously only at this current point in time only has the value that people think it has, and it has a high propensity of crashing, which makes people want to invest in things like cryptocurrencies. The problem is those have a high propensity of crashing too, so it's kind of like pointless. You're trading one fiat currency for something potentially even more fiat. The only thing that people believe protects them is that you can't just arbitrarily print bitcoins. You have to mine them, and as more miners mine them, the threshold gets lower and lower. Unlike the U.S. dollar, where the Federal Reserve can just print as many as they want, as fast as the printing press can print them without overheating. But the issues that come in with cryptocurrency is you're basically burning fossil fuels with today's infrastructure to repeatedly perform a function, like a meaningless task repeatedly. That same energy could be used for science and engineering, for developing medical technology, for pretty much anything else besides this repeating meaningless hash task generating currency. It's a waste, and it uses hardware, and it facilitates the production of excess hardware, making it harder to get those models of hardware, but also increasing e-waste in the process due to that hardware. All to obtain something that has no value in itself, assigned value only by people thinking it has value, and the reason why they think it has value is that it cannot be inflated. But that value that can't be inflated has to exist in the first place. Like, you can decrease something's value with the inflation, but if it doesn't have any value in the first place to inflate, like, what? So anyway, it has value because people think value doesn't inflate, but only because of that. Like, it doesn't have any value in itself. And if you step back and look at this, it just looks so silly and stupid, right? It looks so dumb. And so, like, I'm trying to buy a GPU to do this YouTube stuff with, right? But because I have it, you go, well, why not try to mine with it? Well, there might be several reasons. One is I might have to buy some software to do it, which I don't want to do because I don't want to patronize that kind of software development. But my conscience might get me and try to get me to not allow me to actually do this mining, or I might not be able to invest enough time into the boot phase of doing the mining. But it's something I sometimes think about, and hopefully I'm not going to become too much of a pariah or sometimes people fall for scams because they're dumb. And I might make people watching this think I might be falling for the scam because I'm sort of thinking about mining and kind of considering it and kind of mulling it over and wondering if my conscience will let me actually do something like try to mine cryptocurrency. Most definitely, though, I will not try to buy multiple GPUs to do this, nor will I buy a GPU specifically for this purpose that I would not have bought anyway, especially in a global silicon shortage where there's so many people having such a hard time trying to get a GPU, and I'm out here trying to buy two. Right, that's just mean. It's just so mean. And just because yeah. Now, you could say that gaming, of course, is also another frivolous task to use a GPU on. And you're right, it is a meaningless, frivolous task. Nevertheless, you're not going to game better by buying 3 GPUs as opposed to 2. And again, only the 3090 has SLI right now. So 2 GPUs opposed to 1, right? It's like, so it's not nearly that much of a problem because you're not buying so many of them. And I may not necessarily only game on my GPU, I might also do some science stuff on it as well. So, I mean, maybe I can morally justify myself, but a little bit there. But, I would never buy a GPU just purely to mine on it and nothing else. I didn't even know I was trying to get a GPU long before this mining thing happened. So the chances of me actually mining on it are very, very, very slim. Because I might just, bail out on that. So, next thing. This is some data, story stuff that will not make any sense if someone is watching this like later down the line, and this is no longer a like GPU shortage. This was being recorded during a GPU shortage incident where people would do stuff like this. So there are several methods people try to buy GPUs, and I've tried as well. The first one is Best Buy, because apparently, according to random people commenting on the internet, Best Buy has the best protection against automated scripts buying things. They have a system where during the Best Buy stock drops, they you get an add to cart button, and you click it. You have to wait for a while, and then it turns gray and it gives you a please wait, and then eventually it says eventually the button will turn back yellow, and this is true. It will turn back yellow. You click add to cart and you try to check out. Now it used to be that the Best Buy app had a shortcut, but apparently that's been removed. I have the app on my phone, but I haven't actually tried it. So I didn't really know. I missed most of the Best Buy drops at the beginning of the year. The first one, then I started actually getting serious and refreshing Best Buy every day, constantly, while at work even, because Best Buy apparently was my best shot, and they also have the Founders Edition cards off Best Buy, which are the best value for money, by a lot. So I started trying to do the Best Buy thing, and I managed to catch one that was on a Tuesday about 5 weeks ago. So I'm recording this on the 27th, which is a Saturday. There's Best Buy drop on Thursday the 25th. And then 2 weeks before that on a Tuesday there was a drop. So that would have been, this is February of course. So 2 weeks before the 25th is the 11th, Tuesday that's the 9th. So I think the 9th was a drop. And there hadn't been a drop for 3 weeks before that drop on the 9th. So I've been already checking a week before that Tuesday came up. Or more than a week actually. But I was doing this at my home, and my home internet again is obsolete DSL. And for some reason when you move from one page to another on Best Buy, you have to actually upload something. I don't know why, but you do. So if you have a really low upload speed, not just download speed, then the Best Buy website operates quite a bit slowly. And because my upload speed's so bad, my download speed's not that bad. My download speed's pretty good. My upload speed is so bad, though. I really suffer on the upload side. I was unsuccessful at getting from one page to another at Best Buy fast enough that I had any chance of actually buying that card. Once I clicked the add to cart, it took a while to get into the cart. Clicked on the cart, it took a while to get to the cart page. And I thought if I had instant page loading, then I could have already clicked through all this before I even loaded the page. The drop that happened on the 25th, I was at work. But when that happened, I was trying to buy a 3090. I got the add to cart button. I then tried to hit it, got the gray please wait, add to cart button appeared again, clicked it again, but it wouldn't click. It wouldn't actually add to cart. The button was dead. And this happened on the Founder Edition card, the Asus TUF card, and the Gigabyte card. On the ROG Strix, I managed to get the card to actually go into the cart. I actually got an add to cart, but once I went to the cart and tried to buy it to check out, it wouldn't let me check out, saying that the thing that I had in my cart was already out of stock. So, no luck there, even with internet fast enough that I could actually load the pages instantly, because at work the internet's that fast. So, it appears that despite Best Buy's efforts to prevent automated scripts from buying the cards, people are somehow maybe there's a way to do this with the app, but people are buying the cards much faster than I can even click. Like, they can buy the card before I can even get to the cart, let alone check out. Which suggests that somehow automated scripts have found a way to get around the quote-unquote bot protection of Best Buy. And that's, people tend to blame bots because of that tendency where it's like, how could you do it so fast that, get through that checkout so fast that I can't even get it in the cart? Right? So, it must be bots. Now, I don't know if it actually is bots. We have no proof, but people think it's bots just because of how fast they can check out and how frustrating it is, and they just want to blame something. So, Best Buy is not working. The next way people are trying is Newegg. Now, I've tried refreshing Newegg and done so a lot. And I noticed that before the Newegg Shuffle thing came along, apparently they're also selling some of them openly. Not all the cards are going into the Shuffle. But I oftentimes would refresh the page. Add to cart button would appear. I would click the add to cart, or on Apple Pay, because I could do this on an iPhone. The Apple Pay and add to cart buttons would appear. I would hit Apple Pay because I don't have time to go add to cart and go to the cart. That's too slow, especially if Apple Pay exists. It would start processing, and then it would hit an error before it finished processing the order. And this is a little bit different. And sometimes, of course, it would hit an error as soon as I hit the Apple Pay button. And sometimes it would start processing and later hit an error. And this is evidence to me that how much time I got in. But even with Apple, so it seems like a lot of people hit app, and this would happen like immediately when the Apple Pay button would appear, right? There is no Apple Pay button, refresh, there is one. Or there is none, there is none, there is one, right? You have to do 3 to make sure. Click Apple Pay, could not go through. Apple Pay was not fast enough. So then Newegg went to the Shuffle system, and I missed, I think, 2 shuffles because of meetings, but all but 2 of them I managed to enter myself in the drawing for all the GPUs and GPUs combos they had. And my account should not really be flagged as a dupe because I don't have any dupes, and I've actually bought products from Newegg before. So I'm a customer that's like somehow that's established, so they should be able to tell that I'm not a bot. I have won 0 of those Newegg shuffles. Now, it seems possible because people claim they have won them, but me personally have not. And all but 2. All of the GPUs. Not a single selection. And that kind of makes sense because the demand exceeds the supply by multiple orders of magnitude. But I've tried doing that. And, well, I just do it whenever there's a shuffle, and I never won yet, but whatever. Newegg tends to stock expensive SKUs on their site. It's not necessarily Newegg's fault, it's the board partners, but they tend to stock MSIs and very expensive board partner models. Now, yeah, an MSI for some reason charges a whole lot for their board partner cards. And you would think, well, competition would prevent that from them from actually selling them if they're overpriced. The problem is that people are more willing to pay overpriced board partners than scalpers, of course, because scalping coming from a scalper allows the scalpers to break even and decreases the risk of scalping, and you shouldn't do it, even if they come down to retail. Talk about that later. Maybe, if I remember to. So, if all the other cards besides the MSI ones will sell out first, but if you've driven to Micro Center several hours and you're there and the only ones left they have is MSIs, you have go home empty or pay a couple extra $100 for the MSI card, for which there's no reason for it to cost $200 more than other board partner cards. Of course, the Asus ROG Strix is expensive, but it's the ROG Strix, and the tough ones are relatively not as expensive and relatively high performing. So Asus has some affordable SKUs. They're not necessarily all ROG Strix, but yeah, the ROG Strix is understandably a high demand and a very expensive one. But all of the MSI models are overpriced. Some for the 3090, the Ventus, which is supposed to be their cheapest one, actually costs more than the ROG Strix. The Asus ROG Strix. Yeah, but they can get away with that because, like, the demand is so high that if everything else sells out before the MSIs will sell too. So you can sell overpriced graphics cards. So we can say the MSI itself is a scalper. So anyway, tried shuffling, tried F5ing Newegg. As much as I can, no luck. Third thing, the EVGA waitlist. I pooched this one. This could have gotten me a card if I wasn't a moron. So, I heard about this in early October, which was long after the queue system started. But I thought, oh, this is something to try. I'll click the auto notify button for one of these models. And at the time, I didn't really understand, because I just started my job, I didn't really understand the value of VRAM. I didn't really understand why I might want a 3090. In fact, I thought that the card that I was most likely going to want to use was a 3080. And so I signed up for the least expensive SKU for the 3080, thinking, well, I don't need a fancy backplate or an extra large cooler or anything. So I signed up for the XE Black for the 3080. Well, and just that one, and didn't sign up for any of the other ones. Which is dumb, because just because you get the notify email doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy it, right? So I should have just signed up for all of the SKUs at the time. But for some reason, I couldn't get my head on straight and didn't think to do that, even though obviously you should do that. So, got it. Progress. So, I signed up for a card that they don't really make any of. If anybody's familiar with the EVGA waitlist, or I don't know why I say EVGA, the EVG, no one actually pronounces the acronym. The acronym is EVGA, I don't know what it stands for. I'll just keep saying EVGA because I'm used to saying EVGA. Because I didn't understand that EVGA made so much more and added so much more to the queue. They're higher, more expensive SK, there's higher models. And if I would have, at the time I did that, added myself to, and I didn't know about this because I wasn't reading the forums at the time, I should have signed up for all of them, and I would have been able to buy a 3080 FTW3 Ultra or a 3090 FTW3 Ultra by now, if I would have signed up for those on the queue at that time, because those have already passed my notify. So that was stupid. I could have had it, but I didn't, because I didn't sign up for all the SKUs. When the 3060 Ti launched, again, I wasn't reading the forums, so I didn't know the queue would go live the day before the launch. Now, I'm not really interested in the 3060 Ti. I might settle for it if that's the only thing I can get, but I want to practice entering the queue and enter the queue anyway. So I ended up adding myself the day before, day after launch, the day of launch in the afternoon, and that was dumb because that made me over a day after the queue start, which puts you several months before they get to you, if even, if not years. One day made that much difference for the 3060 Ti. They haven't got through the first hour after releasing the queue on those. Then the 3060 came out. I didn't really care, I don't care for the 3060, I don't really want one, but I want to practice entering myself into the queue, right? So, well, I didn't do a very good job because it happened to happen the same time as the Best Buy drop, so I was late. Well, but I did look, but the site crashed for about 20 minutes. So people who were trying to get onto the site couldn't sign up until about 20 minutes after the queue started, unless they had a direct link to the queue, which was hard to get because it's hard to get on the forums, but some people managed to get a direct link to adding themselves to the queue and then use that to get in at, this happened 9 Eastern, like 9 Eastern, 9:01 Eastern. But most people, but if you tried to just go to that web page on the site, you couldn't get there until about 9:20 Eastern. And because I was all bogged up trying to get cards off Best Buy, I didn't get into the queue until about 9:35 Eastern. And that was for the more expensive SKU, and then immediately went for the less expensive one. But you always sign up for the most expensive one first because that's the one I actually make the most of. Although EVGA has this queue, it appears that most of the cards that they make go to retailers like Best Buy and Newegg or Amazon, where they're subjected to however you buy things through those people. And they really have a small proportion of the cards they make left over for direct sale. And so very few of the cards they actually make actually go into the queue to satisfy the people waiting in the queue for cards. So being in the EVGA waitlist queue is somewhat a disappointing experience. It doesn't pan out as well as you may think. Some people could say it's almost like a just for show thing, just to appease the public, because the public is constantly demanding waitlists and queues and pre-orders. But because the queue is supplied so slowly, it's very unrealistic that you can actually get your card through them unless you sign up the first few minutes after the queue starts, which we're past the opportunity for you to do so now. Early January, I did put myself on every single queue, but that was early January, and it's going to take years for them to get to early January on every queue, except maybe the FTW3 Ultra 3090, and that queue hasn't moved since it jumped forward by a day last. Because I guess once it gets past the congestion points, they stop putting as many in the queue because I don't think they need to. So you think the queue is going to fly, and it just doesn't. So there might have been hope at one point that the 3090 FTW3 would get to January quickly, but it doesn't look like there's hope for that either. So it doesn't look like that's realistically going to actually ever yield me a card. Oh well. And then lastly, beyond there's mom and pop stores, but I don't have any mom and pop stores nearby. Lastly, for people in the United States, after Best Buy, Newegg, and the EVGA queue, you can also direct buy from B&H Photo, but B&H Photo hasn't stocked a 3090 in months. They've stocked 3070s and things, but it's very difficult to actually buy something from B&H Photo. It's like trying to buy something from Newegg before the shuffle happened, or even after the shuffle happened, because the shuffle is so hard to win. I don't know what I'm doing here with the game. I've got my CPU from B&H Photo, though. Next is Micro Center. Now, the nearest Micro Center to me is very, very far from all the other Micro Centers. You'll probably tell which one I'm talking about. I don't really want to say out loud where I live, but this is going to allow you to, if you're Sherlock Holmes, deduce it. Or induce it, whatever the correct term is. So it's more of an isolated location. And it's one of the worst for stock. Like, the ones in New York and Ohio tend to get much more stock than this Micro Center does for some reason. And it's about an hour and 15-minute drive from my house. And about an hour and 10... little less than that, maybe a 15-minute drive from work to get there. And it's about 80-something miles from my house and about, 60 miles from work. So to go from my house to there is about a 160-mile round trip, because freeway driving get 40 miles per gallon, which means I burn about 4 gallons of gas, which is going to be about well, it's not quite $4 a gallon where I live, but it's pretty high. It's going to cost me between $12 and $15, probably around $15 per trip in gasoline to get up to Micro Center. Now that for the price of a graphics card, that in proportion isn't that much. So I consider it worth it to take a few $15 trips. But yeah, there's like a cost to go driving an hour. Also, the hours at which they're open conflict with my work. Now, luckily, if they don't have any stock, I have ability to find that out before work starts, because the manager comes out and tells you. But like before, in enough time for me to get to work on time. But if they actually do have stock, it's gonna make me, if I succeed, it's gonna make me late for work, which is kind of obnoxious, because they don't open till 10, and I want to be at work by 9. So I won't be at work until 11 if I have to wait till the store opening. So, and you have to camp out overnight, and and the stock is random. There's no pattern, so you have to basically canvas several weeks of time camping overnight over and over and over again for a chance to actually buy one. Just to buy a piece of electronics that so many people want, right? A popular piece of electronics. This isn't like some weird niche thing. This is something that most people want to buy. You can't buy, because whoever made it didn't make enough of them, and there's people buying many of them by fraudulent means, or not necessarily legally fraudulent means, but untoward means, to deprive people of these things. Okay, so the reason I talk about graphics cards a lot here, but that's the reason why I do, is because well, it's on my mind a lot, but two, this is my journal of my progress making YouTube videos. And the graphics card is very important for me to be able to make YouTube videos. So I talk about them a lot because it's relevant to the subject matter of what I talk about on the series. So it's kind of a dead horse at this point, but I bring it up a lot because that's what this is about, really. Right, so when I did actually wait in line in front of Micro Center yesterday. People thought there would be a big drop yesterday because of some empirical inductive things. There turned out to not be, as far as I know. But I managed to get some people's opinions there. One of them was, for playing video games, there isn't any performance gain of a, say, i9 over an i7, or like over 10 core GPU as a CPU as opposed to like an 8 core CPU. Because games just don't utilize that many cores well, and with the more cores you have, the less clock speed you have per core. This is well known. There's an general opinion that gaming performance caps out at about 8 cores. At least in the era in which I'm recording this. Things change in tech rapidly, of course. I bought an 18 core because I thought it would help in video rendering speed. I thought that it might be able to parallelize the rendering process and render potentially up close to 3 times faster than a 6 core. And this would be the case just because MoviePy does not utilize the GPU well. If you were curious, yes, Adobe Premiere does utilize your GPU. It does have in its source code utilization of OpenCL and CUDA. But MoviePy does not. It's just a Python script. It does not actually use PyCUDA. Or Numba or PyOpenCL. Oh, I just miraculously survived that. It doesn't actually utilize those things. So it does all of its rendering on the CPU. And it turns out that although it wasn't close to 3 times faster, it was only maybe like a little faster, like 30% faster, and it just was less utilized than my 6 core. So when I utilize my 6 core, it goes about CPU utilization is generally between 70 and 100% during renders. On my 18 core, it's usually around 30 to 40% utilized during renders. And I can look at using core temp, the utilization, because core temp is light enough weight I can get away with this. Utilization per core, and, excuse me, I got a cough. The utilization per core, and it only goes up to about 40% on the cores that are most used, biased more towards cores 1, 2, and 3. Core 0 and the later cores not used as much for some reason. So something I worry about a little bit is CPU temperature, because I bought a 120 millimeter 120 by 240 AIO for it, and it sounds, if you leave it enough, like over an hour rendering, that AIO will eventually sound like a rocket taking off. So that's why I looked at use core temp to look at the core temperatures while doing this, and I didn't actually get the fans up on the AIO to full speed during this 1 hour render, which is good. And during the render, the hottest core was at 62C, and that's 62 centigrade or 62 Celsius. And that was core number 3. And it only got that hot at the beginning of the process. Once the AIO saturated, it actually, like later, it didn't keep climbing. Like that 62 centigrade happened early in the rendering process. It didn't cool down after that. And that was at 40% utilization. And I'm sitting here going, well, 62C I guess isn't bad, but especially if your TJ Maxx is around 110. But maybe I should have gotten a 140 by 280 radiator or a 120 by 360 radiator. My case would have fit it, but when you put radiators in the front, that obstructs the airflow in the front, right? Because you have a radiator in the way, as opposed to just purely fans. So you get less cross flow from the front to the back of the case than if you just used just fans in the front, and you top mounted as your radiator as exhaust. So I thought, okay, I'll just do a 120 because I can fit up to only 120 at the top of the case. This is a Leon Lee Landcool 2 Performance Mesh case. Very well reviewed case. That's why I bought it. Very good case, but it only supports up to a 120 by 240 at the top. You could put 140 fans on the top, so like just fans that are the size of a 140 by 280 millimeter radiator. But if you try to put two layers to have the radiator and the fans, then it'll actually interfere with the motherboard. So you can only put a 120 by 240 millimeter radiator. You can put 140 by 140 fans if you want to. So I thought that was the best configuration, was a smaller radiator, but something's tempting me to, something's making me kind of regret the choice and not getting a bigger radiator. Jay's 2 cents said that, for pretty much anything 120 millimeters is a 120 by 240 is enough. If you want to go extra, 120 by you can go for the 360 or the 280, but the 240 is good enough is good enough, right? Well, I don't know if he was really considering the weird consumer like me who wants to always buy the most powerful components possible and never skips, right, on any computer hardware. I always go for the top of the line on every component. That's at least processing component, not necessarily the peripherals. Actually go terribly. I skip hard on the peripherals, and on the cores, I go really hard on the best of the best. Devices wasn't necessarily speaking to people trying to core Cool i9-18 cores, and I don't know what happened, why the menu came up there, and so I don't know. I also bought a Corsair one, and it works, but if you watch a lot of Gamers Nexus, which you should before you actually decide to build a PC, required homework, which I didn't watch enough of before I built my PC, you'll find that for the radiator size, coolers by EK and, say, Arctic Freeze perform a lot better, both at max performance and his noise normalized testing. But the fan's been max out at some point, so care about the max performance too, not just the 35 dBm noise. Or the 35 dB performance. I don't know what the cost difference though between the Corsair one and the EK is, but I probably even if I was going to go with a 120, I probably should have gone with a different brand because nah. I just didn't really get the best piece of cooling, which is kind of a shame. I should have done more research before I bought my cooler. But it works, I guess. AIOs conveniently have a lifespan of only 5 or 6 years. Then enough coolant evaporates from them that they start to perform significantly worse, right? You get significantly hotter tips. And that would give me an excuse to replace it with a bigger and badder AIO, but as opposed to air coolers, which just last forever. But in the tech world, 5 to 6 years is actually quite a long time. But given how many cores I have, it's going to take a long time for my stuff to go obsolete. But you'll be surprised how fast things go obsolete. Yeah, if you don't know who Gamers Nexus is, Gamers Nexus is a computer hardware reviewer who is very thorough and extremely useful for purchasing parts. He's not like Jay's 2 Cents or someone like that who just kind of describes it in vague terms. He actually crunches the numbers. You can get the coolers in all the same situation except different coolers and tell you which one's going to get you the lower temps. You just compare them right there, and you'll know exactly which one to buy. So he does a lot of very good work with cases, with coolers, with graphics cards, with CPUs, with everything. I'm also subscribed to him. Could plug somebody else's channel. Okay, so talking about some disappointment with my choice of CPU cooler. But it'll work. It'll last me, until it doesn't, and then I'll go for a front-mounted, bigger CPU cooler, and I'll be happy about that. Or custom water cooling from EK or something of that sort. Okay, got through the Bitcoin and clarifying what I know about Bitcoin. Got through my GPU, what I've been trying to do to get my GPU to continue with this YouTube stuff. Got done saying NVIDIA GeForce Experience is not a good choice. I guess next is I think I've made my decision on how I'm going to do the thumbnails, because you've probably been noticing I haven't really been doing thumbnails at all. I have done screenshots for some of them. Obviously, the Vnog ones were screenshots of the chapter title screens. But other than that, I haven't been making thumbnails. I'm thinking that I should just paint the thumbnails. So, do it less of a geek way and more of an artist way. So, like, if I was doing a series, just have like a template painting, like a cookie cutter template painting ready, and then just change the number on the painting from instance to instance of that series. So you do one painting per series. There's something like Bionicle Games Review, which I'll explain what that is. There might be several different paintings in rotation, and that's how I'll do the thumbnails. They don't have to worry about canvas sizing and junk. And the YouTube banner, which I don't have one right now, and the profile picture, which I do have a profile picture, however, that's the profile picture from my other YouTube channel. I just copied it over, so I don't have a unique one for this one. That was the one that was intended for the other YouTube channel. That other YouTube channel is stagnated right now. I haven't put anything on there, nor prepared to produce anything for it in a while. I want to pick that up, but it's not one of my high priorities right now. I'll try. I want to get to the day I'm recording this. Try to paint that channel banner. So when this gets uploaded, there's probably still won't be a banner, but hopefully soon after this uploaded, there'll be a channel banner thing, which isn't really that important, but it's nice to have one just so that people think I actually care. Yeah, and then Bionicle Games Review is just going to be what I do when I'm done with all these Bionicle games. So right now I'm recording all of the Bionicle games. I'm recording them not knowing how to record stuff well because I'm new at this and not knowing all the ins and outs. And so some of those recordings have crummy effects to them, such as recorded using NVIDIA, so the audio doesn't sound very good, or at only 30 FPS or low resolutions or something like that. Or audio that's clipping, or audio that wasn't recorded in separate tracks, and so the game audio envelops my voice, and like there's all these problems with them. Some of them turned out good, some of them not as good. Once I'm done with all of these videos, though, I'll go back and do all the games again. Now that I know what I'm doing, and actually do them well, I'll do them all in one series called Bionicle Games Review. And hopefully it should go pretty fast, because once I've played all the games, I know how to do them. I play through games I've already played before, and about a third the time it takes me to play through them the first time. The exception, so there won't be any blind playthroughs in that. I'll have all the blind ones just be the rough cuts. Now, before I do the review, though, I want to do all the first rough cuts. So I have to get through all the rough cuts, which there'll be some holdups because there are some hard rough cuts. The infamous one being Bionicle the Game GBA. I'm probably going to record some more of that after I'm done recording this, and that game is not easy. It's not easy. It's not really designed to be Let's Play. It's designed for you to kind of grind at it for years, and it's like a project game. It's not necessarily not fun, but it's not necessarily a bad game. It's just not good for blind Let's Play. So that one's the one that's going to get lagged behind, and it worries me. And I'll probably work that in with trying to get Never 7 recorded. If you ever heard of Never 7 End of Infinity. And Your Turn to Die, maybe Danganronpa Another, and try to just kind of disperse them in there, one each a week or something. So I'll pre-record it, and then I'll record them while I'm uploading the last of the Bionicle first passes, for which I have this huge buffer I'm trying to eat through, and I probably don't want to eat through. Like, I record way more footage than I can upload with those, so I'm way ahead. I've recorded so much more of that than I've uploaded. So there's going to be a time where I haven't uploaded all of the... I've finished all the Bionicle games for the first pass, but have not uploaded any of them. And then I'm going to go back and I have to upload all of them, and while I'm recording those, I'll record like Stagulator Episode 1 or Stagulator Season 1 or Instance 1 or whatever. While those are being released. And those hopefully will be everything that I've learned going into them, and those will be polished products. I have a lot of stuff I need to do today. One is finish this World's Hardest Game 3 recording. And then, okay, I'll interject here. I'm fatigued of this room, so I feel like the more, if I keep doing more, try to do more of this room to get more of those yellow circles, I'm not going to make any progress, because my brain's already tired of this pattern. So I'm going to, again, I'm going to decide to throw in a towel here and go on to the next room. Again, didn't work last, just to get a change of, like, the pattern, because my brain's fatiguing. Get this recorded, get another Bionicle the Game GBA recorded, then do some pull-ups, do some bicep curls, put gas in the car, start painting the channel banner, practice my bassoon, gee, it's gonna run over. I need a lot of sleep tonight too, because I try to make up a deficit, which you can't actually do, but I try to do the closest that you can to doing that. So, big mess. Saturdays are so busy. I got a little bit insulted by Two Set Violin this morning. They were talking about the Rite of Spring solo, and they said that if you're, like, in the orchestra sitting next to the bassoon starting it, that high C when they come in, it kind of grinds a bit before it materializes. Like, it's like... Right? And I'm like, I can attack a high C. I'm an amateur. I've only been playing for a little over a year. I could... What do you mean? I don't think I actually tuned that right. It's pretty high for my voice. That's a C sharp. It's one off by a half step. There we go. So, I obviously don't have perfect pitch. I missed the C by a half step. I was a half step sharp. Yeah. I overshot that D and hit an E flat, but whatever. But whatever. Yes, bassoonists can cleanly attack high Cs. Even amateurs. It's not that hard. Yeah, singing is something I want to get better at, but, I don't know. I sing a lot when no one can hear me. Well, have you know, I sing a lot in the car. Do I sing in the shower? Yeah, when no one else is home. I sing out of the shower when no one else is home. Probably play it. Maybe we should play it on a bassoon next time as opposed to singing it. If you don't know what the Rite of Spring is, well, listen to it. It's a piece of classical music. You might go, oh, that's boring. But it's a Russian ballet that Igor Stravinsky composed in the 1920s in France. And the story behind it, it is supposed to tell the following story of there's a pagan ritual. Well, there's like Russian pagans, and they're performing rituals. The first movement is a ritual where a sage comes out and kisses the ground. Right, that's all it is. The second ritual, which Stravinsky saw in a dream, which inspired the piece, is they choose a virgin girl and they coerce her into dancing herself to death. Now, I don't know how that makes any sense, but that's what Stravinsky saw in a dream, and so he decided to write a ballet about it. So it's this Russian ballet performed in France about a virgin dancing herself to death. And this was how it was advertised to the French. We're going to put on this ballet, and the Russian ballet, one of Igor Stravinsky's dancers, which he was in love with, he was gay, were very popular at the time, but the crowd didn't like the direction it was going. They didn't like the concept of the Rite of Spring, so they showed up prepared with rotten fruit to throw at the dancers, and there was essentially a riot at the premiere of the Rite of Spring. So it wasn't, you couldn't have heard it anyway at the premiere. But it's the Rite of Spring is famous not only for its absurdity, but for how it inspired film music. Apparently there's some Disney film called Fantasia that I never saw that actually uses it directly as the soundtrack. So, if you're interested in the history and evolution of film music, the Rite of Spring is something to look into. It's kind of a spooky song. and sort of intense, and it builds dramatic tension. Apparently, listening to The Rite of Spring while driving is spooky. I haven't actually tried it, but I can kind of imagine it and imagine why. So, according to some academic, I forgot his name, not necessarily the best, but the most, like, impactful and best representations of their era, pieces of classical music of all time, were Machiavelli's Orfeo, Handel's Messiah, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique, and The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. Now, this is kind of a matter of opinion. I don't know if he was necessarily right about this, but if you can only listen to some pieces of classical music in your life, those would be a good place to start. Now, Orfeo, I don't know if that... Okay, maybe all of them but Orfeo, because Orfeo is way too, like... I don't know. But... it is one of the oldest operas we actually have preserved. And... it's maybe the oldest, like... besides Gregorian chants, the oldest pieces of Western music we have. And so... it's like, if you want to listen to what early music sounded like before medieval music, before the Baroque period, that's a good example. It's actually pretty good. It's hard to perform because the instruments are extremely obsolete. Anyway. But the opening bassoon solo of The Rite of Spring, Stravinsky intentionally wrote it higher than other pieces wrote for the bassoon at the time, like other composers ever wrote for a bassoon at the time, and with the intention of trying to make the solo essentially sound bad. He wanted to make it eerie, and he wanted to make it eerie by making it sound like the bassoonist was straining to hit the notes. So he wanted the effort and the strain to come through in it. Now, in the 21st century, bassoonists developed a technique to be able to play it, and it doesn't really sound like the bassoonist is straining to hit the notes anymore. It just sounds kind of like a pretty thing. It doesn't really sound like the bassoonist sucks anymore, if you listen to The Rite of Spring nowadays. But that's what the idea was. It's not really that hard anymore either. Ravel's Bolero is more annoying. If you have to... there's two high solos that tend to show up often in bassoon audition repertoire. One of which, of course, being the Rite of Spring solo, the other being the solo in Ravel's Bolero. And I think I would probably prefer getting the Rite of Spring solo because Ravel's Bolero is more difficult. It only goes a half step less high, but it's and every single masterclass video for bassoon is all on Ravel's Bolero for some reason. It's just like Ravel's Bolero, this just all day, all night, always just Ravel's Bolero. Ravel's Bolero is probably going to be like for a bassoonist like Canon and D is for a string quartet. It's just like more Ravel's Bolero. Can we play something else besides Ravel's Bolero, please? But anyway, two-set violin is quite entertaining and quite silly. If you like entertaining and silly stuff and yeah. I'm subscribed to those guys too. Man, this recording is just going to be like a repeat of the previous one. Well, I might be. Did you scalp graphics cards? You block? I'm really hungry. I want to make like rolls or cheesecake or something. But oh well. If anyone wondering how that pizza came out from like the first episode of this, whenever I was talking about pizza dough, it was great. I forgot which episode was the pizza dough one. I don't know why I can't just do the same thing I do at the top at the bottom. Move too early. Move too late. Too early. Okay. I ran out of things on the list, which is good. I always like to do that. So I'll just keep playing the game. Until I get through this room, essentially. I have to make more progress than I did last time. I can't just stop until I get through this room. Maybe I'll actually try to sing stuff in the next episode to make sure that I figure out a way to look up the copyright status of everything, though, and make sure I don't sing something that will get me a legitimate claim. I might get like an ICS or something like that, but I can just challenge the ICS and it'll go away. If it's legit, though, I'll have issues. I guess you can have revenues go that place, but it's like, I don't want to support it, you know what I mean? Like, the idea is that if your video gets claimed and you just take it down if it gets claimed, instead of just, like, letting it sit there and letting the revenue go to the claimant, then you're sort of making a statement of like, I don't think you should get money. Sorry. I can't time that right for some reason. Like, I don't know why. So up here, I wait till about then, right? Okay. So I wait till it, like, has to move back, so, like, now? Nope. No, the timing is fundamental. If you look at it, like, if you look in that area, the timing is fundamentally different down there than up in this corner. It's a completely different timing synchronization. Oh, gee. Okay, that's why I can't do the same thing. Because it's not the same thing. Don't call it the world's hardest game for nothing. It's not really the world's hardest game, but it is hard. In case I have to invent a new timing. I don't know what that would be, though. Don't know what was up with that. Oh, I got the Wi-Fi thing worked out. Completely and utterly. Everything's ready except the graphics card. And the power supply if the graphics card overtaxes it, but hoping that doesn't happen. At least I got the timing right, I just executed it falsely. What does falsely mean? I executed it wrong. I performed poorly. Finally! Okay, that's an hour and a half in. Now this room you have to go through 3 times. You go down, you come back up, then you go... Actually, you have to go through it 4 times, because you have to go down, come back up, go back down, and come back up. So, you don't have to get all the yellow circles in it the first time. But, you know. If you forget them the first time you get here, you don't have to do them later. Oh, I'm bad at this. Okay. I'll just leave it. Okay. Next room. Forgot the timing for this too. There. Okay, so you just find any random hole in that one and you slide in. Okay. Then drop. Close. Okay, well, I'm getting tired of this, so I'll end this one here and then move on to the next thing.